Welcome to single staff core concepts of forwards and backwards figure of eights and one beats. What I mean by forwards is front of our hand, back of our hand, front of our hand forwards, front head leading, back of our hand backwards, back head leading. Okay, we're going to start with a 2-beat figure of 8 forwards direction, and this can either be called a figure of 8 or a weave. And the way we start, hand down, flat in front, not pointing out, flat in front, and we start with the front head leading, coming up and over, and we do 2 beats behind, 1, 2, 1, 2 in front, 1, 2 behind, and once you finish that second beat, then you can naturally bring it in front. 1, 2. Once you've finished the second beat in front, you can naturally come behind. And the idea is our pivot point is on our side. We're not bringing it all the way in front here. We start to lose our planes. And what I mean by our planes is our circles. Nice and flat in front, nice and flat behind. We can also do it martial arts style, where it's in front of ourselves here like this. But the reason why we need it on the side of our body is once we start to turn, we're not hitting ourselves and we know where we are. So again, front of the head, 2-beat figure of 8. 1, 2, 1, 2. We can do this nice and low, we can do this nice and high, we can do this bringing it all the way through and all the way back, but the simplest way is just on our side, opening our wrist and closing our wrist. And when I say 2 beats, you can count them. 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the easiest way to be able to understand which direction you're going. The front of the head is leading, the front of the head is leading, and how many beats you're doing. 1 beat, 2 beat, 1 beat, 2 beats. Once you're comfortable with that, we're going to come back to our start position. Now we're going to work on just a 1 beat. And a 1 beat is a little bit more tricky. It feels a little bit different. Anytime we're doing a 1 beat, it's an isolation. What I mean by isolation is it's not so much spinning, it's more isolating one head or the other head. And the easiest way to learn an isolation, any of them, is in quarters. And so, start position, 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once we're comfortable with that, then we can try and do that in just a full circle. And if it ever gets confusing, we're just following that full circle all the way around. Yeah, and it's a little bit tricky at the beginning because it's really just opening that wrist and closing that wrist. And the more you can let the wrist do the work, the more you can kind of just feel the staff guiding the way. So in the end, in these first 2 of a figure of 8 and an isolation, it's really about loosening up that wrist. And so you can see the staff really stays in that grip there. So 1 beat, and the reason why we call it 1 is because we just have 1 beat. 1 head coming in front, and if you were to look behind me, you'd see the exact same behind, just 1 beat or 1 circle. Whether we call it beats or circles, it's not so important. So once we feel comfortable with this 1 beat, we can come back to our start position and try our 2 beat. Again, front of the head leading, 1 behind, 2 behind, 1 in front, 2 in front. Once that's comfortable, as you'll see, they're both from the same position. 1 beat, full circle. When you're ready, 2 beat. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then, now we're comfortable in each position, we can start to transition. 1, transition point, 2, transition point. 1, get comfortable. Okay, I understand where my 1 beat is. Transition point, 1, 2. Okay, I understand where my 2 beat is. Transition point. 1, 2. 1, 2. And I haven't touched on it yet, but I'd always recommend we have a nice little bit of a wide stance with a little bit of a bend in our knees. That'll allow us just to be able to feel a little more. Again, it gives us a little bit more space. Yeah, and that's why we're learning in this way, is to be able to have as much space to be able to do anything we want, any of your own style. And so we're learning the basics in this way so we have the most amount of space to be able to express however we like. And that's why we're learning from this way of just nice and easeful, nice and slow. Slow is control. If you want to be able to do anything fast, you need to be able to do it slow. So in the end, you can go as fast as you want, but we really need to be able to do it slow first. Okay, this is the front hand 2 beat, 1, 2 behind, 1, 2 in front, and the 1 beat front hand, clockwise direction. Okay, now we're going to learn the opposite, backwards. Back of the hand, back head leading equals backwards, 2 beat or figure of 8. So from here, the backwards is a little bit harder, so we'll learn it in some steps just to make it easier. We bring the back of the head up, 1 beat behind, 2 beats behind. Once we've finished our second beat, we can naturally bring the back of the head again, the back of our hand, 1 beat, 2 beats, back to start position. 1, 2, 1, 2. If you ever get confused, back to the start, bring it up, 1 behind, nice and close, nice and flat. 2, once we've finished our second beat, we can bring that over, and we can even bend our elbow just to create some nice space. But the important thing is nice and loose in the wrist. 1, 2 in front, up again, 1, 2 behind. And this is why we're learning in beats, is because when you can see your beats and you can count your beats, you can then know you finished it. 1, 2, okay, now I know I can come back. 1, 2 behind, now I know I can come in front. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now this one is a little bit more challenging, so if you're just figuring it out, be patient with your backwards and just take a bit of time just to feel it out. If you're getting stuck here like this, you're getting stuck and you're putting some pressure on your shoulder, and people will do that, bend your elbow and give yourself space. You know, eventually we can do big circles, but we're just trying to create enough space, or as much space as possible, so we can create our own style. 1, 2 behind, bend our elbow, and we've got all that space. And this is the part people get confused in. Once you finish the second one, you can then continue leading with the back head. And that's why we call it backwards, is because the back head is leading. Back head is leading in front, back head is leading behind. In front, 2, behind, 1, 2. And it will really help you if you're learning to count them. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Very good. Back to the start. Just like we did with the front hand, now we're going to learn our 1 beat in the opposite direction. So this time we're going in anti-clockwise, and we can't call this forwards or backwards because we're not changing heads. So it's just easiest to think of, I was going this way for forwards, now for backwards I'm going the opposite way, and this is anti-clockwise. So again, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, full circle, going through all the quarters. You'll notice that often when you begin, your wrist is quite tight and you're maybe not doing a full circle. So this is really training us to loosen up our wrist, loosen up our grip, and feel the connection to the staff. And whether we're talking about staffs or hoops or poi, it's all the same. 1 beat, 2 beats, figure of 8, it's the same energy, it's the same movement. Once we feel comfortable with this 1 beat backwards or anti-clockwise, now we're going to start to mix that together with our 2 beat. So 2 beats probably harder, different for everyone. So now we'll come from, it's always better to come from what's harder into what's easier, as opposed to coming from what's easier into what's harder. So we'll come from 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 into 1 beat. And the transition point again is right here at the very beginning. 1 beat, transition to 1, 2, 1, 2. Transition point, 1 beat, 2 beats, 1 beat, 2 beats. And the idea of this backwards is we really, for the 1 beat, we just stay down on our hip and keep that 1 in front. The 2 beats, we bring it up, 1 behind, 2 behind, 1 in front, 2 in front. 1 beat, comfortable, 2 beats, do a couple, get comfortable. Once you know where your 2 beat is, then we can transition into 1. Once we know where our 1 beat is, then we can transition into 2. Okay, the only next step to do from here, in the very core concepts of 1 and 2 beat forwards and backwards, is see if we can stop and go back the other way. So we'll go from backwards, because backwards is a little harder. 1, 2, 1, 2, stop, forwards. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and then with 2 we would come behind, but we're going to stop at the transition and go back into backwards. 1, 2, 1, 2, forwards, backwards. Now we'll try the same from 1 beats. 1, stop, 1, stop. Once you get really used to it, you can really play with these areas. This is where you can really start to dance between everything that you know. And right now we're just working with the very core concepts. So again, now we'll try to go from forwards 1 and 2 into backwards 1 and 2. So forwards, front of the hand, front leading, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, change direction, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, change direction, 1, 2, 1, change direction. Now you can start to mix it up. You can do a 2 into a 1, or 2 into a 1. There is no wrong, as long as you're coming from your transition point. Your transition point so far we've been working from here, but there is also one here. But we'll keep it really simple. Anywhere that's on this plane, whether it's here or it's here, is the exact same. We can stop, we can change, we can transition. But we're just working from the simplest from the very beginning, because already we're starting to progress into more and more. So again, to finish today, we've got our front head forwards 2 beat, and our back head 2 beat, and our 1 beat going clockwise, and our 1 beat going anti-clockwise, and then putting our 2 and 1 together forwards, and our 2 and 1 together backwards. And if you can get to that point, train it with your left hand, train it with your right hand, depending on what hand you're dominant. The sooner you learn it on the opposite side, the easier it is. You don't want to go 2 and 3 and 4 days only practicing on one hand. It gets harder for you to learn on the other side. And if you can get to that point, the next step will start to progress. We can start to change hands. Anytime we change, we'll end up in the opposite, but that's not important for now. If you can learn those 2 fundamentals, I can teach you how to go all the way around your body, in front, behind, down low, and all it is backwards, forwards, and the simplest part is the changing of hands. The hard part is having that understanding of 1, 2, forwards and backwards. Very good. Yay. If I'm not with you and you are trying this, send me a video. I'll give you any tips, or we'll take the next steps from there. But this is the core concepts with being free with flow arts or a single staff. Yay. Enjoy.